Well, hello. Welcome back to Two Friends Talking Shit about FPL. Andy is back with us again this week. Yay!
I'm back.
So, Andy,
Hello.
let's not beat around the bush. Erling Haaland, did you have him? Did you triple captain him?
Look, we had Haaland and we did put the triple captain armband. I was very nervous, extremely nervous, because this is fantasy football. It could have gone either way. He could have ended up with just a one goal, or maybe at worst blanked. Who knows? I mean, unlikely, but crazy things have happened. So I'm glad it ended up being a hat trick because the other times when you can use a triple captain would be a double game week, and he could do some damage then too.
You did light up our messenger chat just before the game week started with, "Oh, I don't know what to do. Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I?" But I think Ipswich at home. It was a little bit of an unknown, because Ipswich had put out a good showing against Liverpool, but they were at home. It was first game week. It was emotions high, so it was going to be hard to call. But we knew Haaland was going to start because the City team's a bit depleted. I think it was a good gamble, and it worked out well for you. So now the pressure is on for everyone else in the league to play as equally good a triple captain. Um, and I did not triple captain Haaland. I did not have Haaland. I set up my stall early with not going Haaland, and this little advantage that everyone gets from the triple captain Haaland is just something that I think I have to deal with for now. Did have a slight meltdown, I would say, at the end of the Saturday games when I was sitting there on like 15 points after 7 games played, and was struggling to see how my team was ever going to come back from it. But uh, the Liverpool boys pulled me, out of it a little bit. Enough so that I can kind of see my team for what it is, and be able to go forward with them. And yeah, it's a like we said every week, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. With
Yeah, and Haaland isn't going to get a hat trick every week, right? As much as I'd love for him to. Another thing is, I saw this from another. I think I was watching Let's Talk FPL or something, or another or FPL Scoutcast or something like that, and they were talking about how when you look at it, Salah and Haaland have the same amount of points.
mm,
Both of them are on like 24 points. It's just that Haaland got it all in most of those points in one game week, and it just hurts even more when people play the triple captain. Otherwise, they're on the same amount of points, right? So, yeah, I don't think it's still fully conclusive that Haaland is way ahead. It's just that concentration of points in the one game week.
yeah, I think my annoyance went in a little harder because I'd been playing with a draft close to the deadline. I've a Salah, and I think it was Salah and Solanke out for Haaland, and I can't remember someone in. And I'd been playing with it, and to make sure I didn't mess up my captain, I'd moved the captaincy from Salah to Jota so that I didn't get it caught up if I did do a transfer, and then I didn't move it back. So I was a bit like, "Ooh, game week started, and I still had my captain on Jota," and I was like, "Oh, this could go badly." It didn't go as badly as it could have gone. Jota still managed to return some points, got an assist. So I think I missed out on about 4 points. So at the end of the world, no. But that was just capping off my Saturday night when I was sitting up watching the games, and the goals were going in, and I was not happy.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to run through the results on that segue?
Yeah, let me share this screen like we did last week. So let
Because you're captain of the Jota. I think that could have turned out really like it didn't turn out badly, and that could have. I don't think that it was the worst punt in the world. Jota's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping. Look, it didn't go quite how I wanted it to go, but these things happen, and yeah, like when I saw I'd still had it on Jota, I was like, God, well, I mean, he's playing centre forward. We might still get some points out of here, but the way that Liverpool play with those three front players, it's hard to see where. the points are going to come from, and when you've got your spread. So we've got the Liverpool Brentford game on there. Up there, you got Diaz with a goal, Salah with a goal, Jota with an assist, Diaz with an assist. So like all three involved heavily in the goals, and it's just who's going to put them in. And unfortunately, this time it wasn't Jota. So Diaz and Salah come out with bonus points, and Jota comes out with no bonus points. But another day, and it could be different.
Mm. Absolutely. Uh, Question:
Hear me.
Luis Diaz.
Hmm.
I owned him last season,
Hmm.
and I remember he got points here and there, but people don't really talk about him. But he seems to just come in with points here and there. And at his price point, is he a viable Liverpool asset to own? Just say someone can't just say someone who's on a Haaland draft can't afford Salah or doesn't want to. They've got Jota, and they're like, well, Liverpool still has good fixtures. Is Luis Diaz worth his price point, or was this just like a lucky goal and a lucky assist?
I think it depends on what kind of price points you want in your team. Do you want 2.2, 7.5 mids without having an 8.5, a 9.5, or a 6.5? I think the advantage you get with Diogo Jota is that he's playing up front, he's playing through the middle, so he's going to be in the box for those shots. But we know that Salah and Diaz do cut back in, so they do get their shots on goal. I think if you're going to go with Liverpool assets at the moment, I think it is Salah and Jota still, because you got Salah with the penalties, and he's just a points magnet. He's like 200 points a year. I think you go with the given solid asset, and then Diogo would be your differential because he's through the middle. He's going to be in the spots for those attacking points. I can't see myself staying with Jota for too much longer, though. I think we're seeing rotation 65 minutes in, the Liverpool guys start to come off if they're ahead. And don't forget, there's Gakpo and Darwin both there ready for starts. And I don't think it'll be too long before those guys get brought back in after the Copa and the Euros. And then if there's been talk this week of Liverpool looking at Eze, Liverpool looking at Gordon. So if they bring any of those in, that's another player in the mix. So I think, and then you're going to look at getting your spots are shared. And I think that is probably a good point to move off a Liverpool asset, whether you're moving off a Salah or a Jota. I think I would personally stay with Salah because he's going to play. And then you maybe looking at the as we get to game week 5-6, you're looking at the Arsenal mids is where I would go. Again, it's a different price point, so you set and forget Saka at 10, or 10-1, I think he is now. But I think that's going to be a more solid outcome for you, especially with Trossard and Martinelli on the other side. So yeah, I think Diaz is an option, and if Slot decides that that's his front three, or rotates Jota out for Darwin and keeps Diaz on the left, I think he could be an option. For now, I'd wait and see a little bit, just to see how things settle, and if Slot does just keep the front three as it is, and if it does, then I think he becomes a great option.
Okay. Well, all right. Salah's just that one asset that I want to own in my team, but just don't have a good way of getting him in without making huge sacrifices because of owning Haaland as well.
Yeah, and that's why when I decided that having a Haaland draft looked too unbalanced for me, then I decided to go with a Salah draft. The idea was always to see Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, even, I suppose, which team is consistently getting the points, which one is getting the results, and then that would be my most expensive asset. So if Liverpool starts to drop off and it's third place, fourth place, fifth place on the ladder, and they're struggling to grind out those wins, then I'll probably flick over to Saka or Palmer if he's performing again, or Son. Any of those other assets, but Salah being the most expensive one is the one that went in the team, and he will stay there until he proves that he shouldn't be there anymore.
All right. Well, based on last week, do you let's see how what were your thoughts? Would what any players jumped out from last week's results that you feel like you're interested in?
Yeah.
How you ended up?
So let's spin down the results and kind of quickly talk about them.
Yeah.
So just to like summarize them, like Villa, Arsenal, 2-0 Arsenal looks very good on paper for Arsenal, and it could have not gone that way. I think Watkins had a couple of great chances he should have finished, and without Raya in the sticks there, I think that's a 1-1 draw to finish the game before Partey puts that one through at the end. But I think Raya comes out of it looking good. Saka comes out of it looking good. Watkins showing that he's on point. And then is it Ramsey in the Aston Villa midfield?
Rogers.
Rogers, yeah, he's a mainstay, isn't he? He's staying in that team. So I think he's one to keep an eye on. I think Villa have played well in the two games that they've started with, and they've got a great run coming up. So I think they'll be one to watch. Move to the City Ipswich. I don't know how much we take from this. Like Haaland's hat trick, he does this every year. De Bruyne was sensational in this game. City again letting that goal go, so let the clean sheet go. How much we take from a 4-1 win at home to Ipswich, I don't know. I'd like to still see a bit more of them. I think if you haven't got Haaland, I think you can probably still wait on City assets until we kind of get towards the Arsenal game and in game week 5, and then game week 5 and 6, we can go back to City and really see which ones are stepping through. The Bournemouth.
I heard
Go on.
just on that. I heard a stat. I don't know how true it is, but I heard a stat that Haaland averages a one hat trick every 9 games.
Yeah, it's not far off being right, that one. Already in the top 10 of hat tricks for the Premier League with significantly less games. So, but that's what happens when you play for one of the best teams. It was one of the best strikers in the world, playing for one of the best teams in the world. He's got Kevin De Bruyne behind him. He's got Foden. Those chances are going to come, and he just puts them away. So, how many times do we talk about Haaland, the robot, who has an off day? Like very, very rarely, but they do come. Cool. So then Bournemouth Newcastle is a weird game. Is Newcastle just not the team that we thought they were going to be this year? They've seemed to struggle to get out the bat. We've not seen anything from Isak yet. Gordon got on the score sheet this week, which is good for him. But again, is he staying? Is he going? Trippier, is he staying? Is he going? Lewis Hall was a set and forget defender, and he didn't even start this game. So then is he now longer an option? More questions than answers from Bournemouth Newcastle. Bournemouth showing that they can still score though. Still got on the score sheet. That's a great result for Bournemouth. They bring in a striker. Who knows what can happen with this season.
Well, if they don't, Semenyo, this is their second return in a row. Like, if they don't bring the striker, legitimately, as long as Bournemouth can get on the score sheet, Semenyo is going to be involved, right?
And they do have a striker in there as well, a young guy, new acquisition that is going to be in the team. So they changing someone up top is a bit different to changing someone in the middle, as opposed to it's just a finisher. And Solanke was a finisher, a poacher. So maybe their structure will stay roughly good, and they do become an option. It'll be interesting to see them going forward into the double digit game weeks to see if they are going to be an option.
Absolutely.
And then I think, even though the game week was awful for me, this result brought joy to my heart. Watching Man United lose 2-1 to Brighton. Last minute, João Pedro, one of their old own boys, Danny Welbeck, putting another one in. An interesting game to see. Like, this was my thought that I had before the deadline was Solanke. I was get him out for a price drop. I was looking at Pedro. I was looking at Welbeck. I thought Welbeck might get a return against his old club. And then Solanke goes and gets price locked. So I'm like, right, I can wait a week. I'm not going to do that one. Decide not to make a last minute transfer. And they both return. So, you know, annoying. But Brighton look good. They control a lot of that game. They went forward. Matoma was good again. Pedro and Welbeck both on the score sheet. Minter looked good again. Their back line looks quite good. And Man United are really missing some players. They are really struggling to get any cohesion together in that back line. Fernandez is still involved in everything. Again, it's second game week in a row, and he should have got some returns. And again, he's sitting there on 2 points. So he's another one for me. Is what do I do with him now? Do I keep the faith in him? They go into Liverpool next, which is not great. I think it's Liverpool home, but if United are going to get stuff out of this, it's generally going to come from him, and it's surprising that he's got nothing so far.
And Man U versus Liverpool is a big game, right? That it's a tough game, but there's goals in it, isn't there?
Well, and it's flicked from recent times. Like if you go back to the early 2000s to like 2010s, it was always a Man United win, 3-1, 4-1, 3-2. And then we kind of go into the 2020s, especially 2018, 19, 20s, and it was significant Liverpool wins at Old Trafford. We talk about the 4-0 away. But then last year, was it a 0-0 and a 1-1? And then United came out in top in the FA Cup. So Man United rise to the Liverpool game. They rise to the City game. So they not had a great start to the season, but I don't count them out. As a Liverpool fan, it's still a tetchy game when Liverpool go to Old Trafford. It's anything can happen, and it's those players that are the Rashfords, the Fernandes, Luke Shaws that pull the team up. And if you're a young Man United player in that team, you do not want to lose to Liverpool. So you play the best game you play all year. That Man United could get relegated and still beat Liverpool at Old Trafford.
Hey, what are your thoughts on Mazraoui?
I haven't.
Because he's returned twice now.
Yeah, he has. I haven't seen enough of them really. He seemed to be. He did get forward, and if he's going to be an attacking wingback kind of thing, that might could be a good option for us. I don't see United getting too many goals outside of Fernandez helping when Højlund comes back. So I'd be wary until that point because he can get forward and put the crosses in, but who's going to finish him? So, in this case, it was Ahmad, and I think it was a bit of a scrappy goal if I remember. But it's yeah, I'd like to see them with some attacking strikers, striking force in that team before I go start picking some of their fullbacks. I think.
Fair. Next up, mate. Is Everton now has Everton and Crystal Palace become the teams to target when choosing captains because they got demolished by Spurs.
Yeah, and this Spurs game, this is Spurs being very Spursy. The first game was a bit iffy. They should have won it. They didn't. This was what Spurs can do, and this is without their recognised striker on the pitch. And they didn't start Richarlison either. They started Kulusevski up through the middle, but this is what Spurs can do. Everton are a weird one. Like they should have a good defensive unit. They've got Sean Dyche at the head, and he always puts out defensive teams. And they looked good last year, and not a lot has changed for that back line. And I don't really see why this is happening. Whether they just need to get going, whether there's some disruption with maybe Branthwaite leaving and not being in the team at the moment because of his injury. Maybe they need to settle. Don't know. But they did this last year as well. They started badly and everyone was going they could be relegated. And then Pickford ended up being one of the top goalkeepers of the year. So, hard to judge with Everton. They do have the query, another points deduction hanging over. But their issue seems to be they can't score goals. Again, Calvert-Lewin is still there. He's still not scoring regularly enough. It's going to be tricky, I think, for Everton without putting some goals in. And Spurs again. I don't know what to I don't know what to do. I think we need more time on Spurs again. Two tricky games coming up
Mm.
now. We say tricky games. They've got Newcastle, who also haven't shown up to start with, but Newcastle and is it Arsenal? I think in the next two. Yeah,
Mm.
that's going to show us what they're like. Because if they're a yo-yo team again, like they can win and then they can lose, did their assets stay in our teams or not?
Good point. You've raised a good point. Even when I used to play fantasy football back in the Robin van Persie, Rooney days,
Yeah.
I never remember ever owning an Everton attacking asset. The most attacking asset I owned was Leighton Baines, and he was a defender.
Mm. Tim
Outside
Cahill.
of that, I've never owned an Everton attack. Oh, yeah, actually, yeah, okay, Cahill, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
Cahill's the one that I would have had in the past. Um, I've had a differential there here and there, like a Yakubu or a one-off Richarlison. I think I owned for a few weeks at some point when he was there. But yeah, you don't hold them for long because they grind out their points. But then they do sometimes come out with a sixth or a seventh place finish. And there was a few years there. I think just before the Klopp years at Liverpool, where Everton were finishing above Liverpool. Um, didn't last long, which is good, but there was a few. So they can do it, and they do seem to have a base. Yeah, I don't know where the goals are coming from, and do they need to just splash out and get a new striker? It's hard to tell.
Mm.
All right, let's move on. I know we need to see Solanke back for Spurs. I think once he's shaking his injury off, I'm expecting after the international break with Postecoglou's comments, but that will kind of show what that team is gonna do. All right, Fulham, Leicester. I think what we expected. I think Leicester have put up a bit more of a fight than I think anyone expected. I think we expected a Fulham win. I didn't expect Adama Traore to be in the assists, but he's there. Muniz getting nothing again. Smith Rowe on the score sheet again. Uh, but I think Muniz is again unlucky to be on the score sheet. Smith Rowe is playing well. He's just not got the fitness at the moment from not playing at Arsenal. It'd probably take him, 8 or 9 games to get his legs. But then I think he's going to be in that team. I don't see him not being in there. I think it's just going to come after their run of good fixtures, unfortunately. But if they are putting together decent runs, who knows? They played well against United game week one, got a win against Leicester. Again, it's going to be the theme of the day. I think a bit of a wait and see to see where we're going and how they build, but definitely ones to keep an eye on. Robinson as well in the back line. Anderson from that they bought from Palace. It's some options to keep an eye on for if we do need to move to a Salah Haaland or a Palmer Haaland something draft. Like there's options there for some cheaper differentials.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I did not know Anderson moved from Palace. Look, I'm so out of the loop with transfers, and this is why you're the info, you're the brains person. I'm just like along for the entertainment and the slight commentary and banter here and there. But there we go. Um, Smith Rowe. I remember when I was putting together drafts at the start of the season, it was, but my 5.5 was either going to be Brereton Diaz or Smith Rowe because everyone was like upping Smith Rowe heaps in the preseasons or like what they were saying was Smith Rowe is going to be amazing. So it's been pretty cool to see that he's one of those preseason punts that has actually eventuated to something. I mean, we're still very early, but let's see if we can keep it up.
Mm.
But it eventuated because a lot of people were upping what Nkunku, which we'll talk about, Eze, Isaac, and Isaac are great players, but I mean, we'll go on to Crystal Palace and West Ham, but this feels like last year where on paper it looks good, but no matter how unlucky someone is, that unluckiness can keep up for a while.
Yeah, and that's where I am stung by Darwin Nunez from last year. Is Eze, Fernandez, Muniz have got great stats this year. They've got great goal involvement. They've got great expected goals, expected assists. They're just not coming out. Eze's had 15 shots in 2 games, a disallowed free kick goal. Like everything points to him being a great asset. He just has not managed to turn it into any points yet. My concern is that Crystal Palace team seems to be falling apart. They've lost Elise, they've lost Anderson. Gahey may be moving to Newcastle. That's their centre back pairing gone. They've still got Muniz on that side, but I see if they've lost that centre back pairing, that's the clean sheets gone, which was pivotal for them. They've lost that other attacking threat in Elise, and they've got Mateta, but they haven't really replaced that attacking midfield option. And if they lose Eze, I don't see Palace options being options at all. But yeah, again, it's just if a few of those chances go in, like in a different story, different day, we have Fernandez returning both games, Eze returning multiple games, Muniz returning games, and my team is sitting at number 1. But none of them have returned. And it's how long do we stick with them? Darwin Núñez hit the post double digits last year, 3 times in one game. He had so many shots on target. He had the most shots on target for strikers in the whole game. He had the best stats and the worst score. How long do you stick with the players who are getting good stats but not producing? And are you going to ditch them the minute they start scoring? For me, it's too early to jump off, and I think I'm going to try and stick with them until the wild card. But I could be tempted. I think Eze, Fernandez, for me, are upgrades only. I'm not going to downgrade them to anything lower because I'll lose my price points, and I think I can get some stuff out of him. But if I was going to upgrade a Fernandez to a Saka, it's an upgrade. I think that would happen. But when we get to transfers, we'll see if it has happened. But I think that's where I'm going, and that. Yeah, and this Palace game was another one of those. It could have gone the other way, but West Ham finished their chances, and Thomas Souček again in the goals. Bonus point as well. I'm not saying throw him in your team, but he's a good differential, maybe a bench player. He's and to be interested to see what that team does, West Ham, because we wrote them off, I think, a bit at the start of the season, but beating Palace at home, it's not bad.
How much is Souček?
6, something like that.
Oh, so it's not cheap. He's not like a 5 milli or something.
No, he's not. But he's a. If you're playing 3 up top, you could get Souček as your 4th midfielder and get a really cheap 5th potentially. Whereas we come on to Southampton on one of our other cheap midfielders, as you mentioned before, Brereton Diaz. I don't see this Southampton team scoring.
No, not at all.
Surprised that Forest didn't put more past him. And I think that's Armstrong and Diaz out, Brereton Diaz out for me now. They're not creating enough, they're not finishing enough. They're gonna struggle, I think. They're gonna struggle. And you talked about people we target with captains. I think Southampton, they're in there for me.
Yeah, likewise. All right, well that's Southampton, Nottingham Forest done. Wolves Chelsea. This is a big one.
This game, what does this tell us? Don't know. Wolves played really well. First half, 2-2, end of the first half. They responded to Chelsea's goals. They constructed good chances. They put 2 good goals past, and they just never came back out for the second half. Palmer was in the inside instead of on the wing like he was in the first game. And he just, with little passes to the side to Madueke. 3 identical goals pretty much for Madueke. I would preach patience with Chelsea. I think I've seen a lot of Nkunku to Madueke moves. I think it's a sideways move, and I think you should hold a bit. I think it's going to be a bit of a Spurs thing. Like they might show up one week, they might not show up one week, but do we want... They still have 40-odd players in their team. Do we want that I think if you have Nkunku, you've got to move him on. He was the third attacking player to come on after Felix and someone else came on and before them. So if he was going to be playing, I think he comes on first. So I think he's
Uh,
out of my thoughts.
Chelsea reminds me of Man City, where other than one of their players, you can't be certain the rest are nailed, and it's going to be you just have to be okay with benching them, playing them every week, but them being benched. But when they do play, they could potentially score big. Like Madueke, I seriously considered, oh my god, this guy just sort of scored a hat trick,
Yeah.
right? Surely they're not going to drop him, but you never know. I think Palmer is the only nailed Chelsea asset who will score well. It's just that for 10.5. Oh, where do you find the funds? I mean, I've played around with a few drafts where a few transfers where I'm 2 moves away from Palmer, but I don't know. Do I? Don't I? What cost does that come at? It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, and again, it's for me, it's too early to tell. And if I was going to jump on a 9.5, 10 million player, it's going to be Saka because he's got more than one season's worth of evidence. He's in, for me, the better team, the more consistent team, and he might not get a hat trick uh, in a week, but you're going to get more returns from him. I feel he's on penalties as well. Um, Palmer had a great season last year, but he was the only thing about that Chelsea team that worked last year. So, I don't know. See what happens with again. See what happens. See what they put out. They weren't awful against City, and they were good against Wolves. But how long will it last for? Is there going to be too much rotation? We need to see the same 11 to 14, 15 players hit the pitch every week before we can decide. Um, yeah. And do they just play 20 players in the Premier League and a different 20 players in the Europa Championship or whatever it is they're in? I don't know. And that's another thing that Madueke might play until their European adventure starts, and then who knows? It could all go down the drain again.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, let's see. All right. Well, let's jump into our scores then for the. Actually, is that on the run sheet? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I don't
think
want to be
we've
hijacking.
talked about Palmer, Saka, Watkins. Um, Isak is another one that we haven't touched on as much. Um, what are your opinions about Isak? Do we keep him? Do we move him?
Isaac, look, everyone was bigging him up at the start of the season. And he did well towards the end of last season, but I don't know. We're just not seeing the result. I mean, look, he did get one return in the first game, an assist.
Hmm.
I'm keeping him for a bit longer, but my decisions are very price driven. So it doesn't look like he's changing in price anytime soon. So there's no reason for me to ship him. That's not a high priority target, and I'm happy to keep him for this upcoming game
Yeah.
because it could be a big one. Um, yeah, that's my view on it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you as well. Home to Spurs this week. Spurs be Spursy. Like they might not show up. Newcastle could run out of that 4-0 winners. Isak can get a hat trick. He's definitely a hold, and he's another upgrade only. I think for me, I don't think I'm going to downgrade him. I think if I'm going to move him out, he's going to move to Watkins. Um, um, or if Newcastle are obviously dropping off and Tottenham are obviously coming up, I would consider the Solanke move from Isak. But yeah, I think up to Watkins would be where I would go until wildcard, and then I would make that decision on wildcard.
Yeah, fair.
All right. Well, let's have a look at our teams, how we did. I'll go first, I suppose, because I think let's get that one out of the way. This one, I think.
While you bring that up, you're right. Watkins, look, Arsenal was lucky to get away with a clean sheet. Watkins missed a sitter, from what I was told. I haven't watched the game. Classic Andy move. But and here's the thing: Watkins is only playing 60 odd minutes, isn't he? He's getting subbed off early, so I wonder
Yes,
what's going on there
65 minutes,
because
and then Duran is on the pitch. If you
yeah,
go back and watch the Watkins miss, it's less a miss and more top save from Raya. The ball kind of comes and beats him, comes back off the bar, and then he saves one forward, and then he's on the floor, and as he's getting up, Watkins heads it straight at him, and he gets up and saves it. Two awesome saves to deny Watkins.
go Raya,
I think,
go
yeah,
Raya.
you put make that Crystal Palace, make that Brighton. I think that's 2 goals for Watkins. So yeah, it's interesting to not see him on the score sheet. But all right, so this is my disaster of a game week. Started with Henderson in net, 1 point. Alexander Arnold is clean sheet with 6. Gvardiol with 2. No attacking returns and a bit less attacking in this game. Pedro Porro with 6 with their clean sheet. Again, it's my defensive boys who kind of gave me the points early. Mohamed Salah with 10. Eze with 2. Fernandez 2. Diogo Jota as captain with 12. Nkuku with 1. Isak with 2. And Muniz with 2. And my bench was Flecken had 3 points. Konsa had 1. Solanke didn't play. And Barco didn't play. So a total of 46. Not the best week, but it's another one of those. If you like we said earlier, if we drop a goal into Eze and Fernandez and Isak, that's average game week. So too early to panic, I think, but enough to be wary of. And another blank from a few certain players next week. There'll be some thoughts and decisions made over the international break before game week 4.
Absolutely. I remember you had a draft where that you started with Raya in it,
Yeah,
and I kept thinking you've got Raya in your team. Man, that was a good call by you. Um, when it comes to Trent, oh look, and this maybe look. Let's say this for the transfers talk, right? Because I've had a few thoughts about Trent, but
sure.
he's been returning. But anyway, I'll share my screen.
Yep.
Where are we? Okay, cool. Cool. So you can see my screen there.
Yeah.
I've got Henderson in goal with 1 because I've only got 1 playing keeper. uh, Saliba with 6 with Arsenal clean sheet, lucky. Trent Alexander-Arnold with 6 points. Robinson came back with a return with 7, so the backline did really well. Diogo Jota with 6, Eze with 2, Brereton Diaz with 2, Saka with 6. Havertz with 2. I brought in Havertz to catch the price rise. Actually, yeah, I don't think I said that in my last transfer talk, but that was a transfer I made. Is I went Solanke out, Havertz in because I wanted to miss the price drop, but Solanke got price capped, and Havertz was going up. So I think he can go up again by 0.1 if he scores this week. So that will help me bank a 0.1 because then that means I would have banked 0.2. So if I sell him, I can keep that 0.1. Haaland with 51 points with the triple captain. So this was the contributor to most of my points. And Isak with 2. Stolarczyk, if that's how you say it, 0. He doesn't play. Howard Bellis with 2. Sangari with 2. And Barco doesn't play. So I ended up the week with 91 points. So very happy with that. Haaland did all the heavy lifting. If it wasn't for Haaland, I probably would have nowhere near that score.
Yeah,
So that's my team for the week.
I think it's important for anyone who didn't hit 90 points this week to just bear in mind that if you don't have Haaland, you miss out on 20, 30, 50 points, depending on if you triple captained him. And that's the difference this week between a great score and a bad score. There's not many good scores because everyone either has Haaland or doesn't have Haaland. And if you didn't have Haaland, none of the others returned. So you're sitting about that 40, 50 point mark below the average. And the triple captains on Haaland blows the average out so much. So I
Massive.
think it's good to bear in mind that take those triple captains away, the average drops 20 points, and you haven't had that much of a bad week.
Although I have seen a few drafts with and one person in our mini league who did not have Haaland and did not have Salah, but they had Son and they had Palmer.
Mm.
And between Son's brace and Palmer's one goal and 3 assists, it actually made up for a lot of not having Salah and Haaland. So
Yeah,
yeah, you know what this tells me? I feel like this season they've priced players so well that everyone's playing this game differently. Some people are on a Salah only draft because it locks you out of Haaland. Some people are on Haaland draft and it locks you out of Salah, and your team's kind of weak. Some people have Salah and Haaland, but the rest of your team's terrible. And some people have neither and they have heaps of premium mids,
yeah.
right? Everyone's playing this game differently.
And that's the thing this week. Haaland returned. Salah returned less so. Son, massive return. Palmer, massive return. Last week, you had better returns from Salah and Haaland than you did from Son, because Son was awful last week. And
Yeah.
Palmer was not great either. So it's blown out again by the dramatic nature of the point getting, but we could see it average out, and it's difficult to tell. And it's early weeks for me are the ones who I think and I know are going to return, which is why I've gone with my Eze's and your Fernandez. They're in the league, they're in settled teams. Fernandez not as much, but he's the talisman or settled is where I like to go. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's everyone
Absolutely.
plays it differently. If you jumped on Trent when he was 4.5 and he had his breakout season, you sit on a Frank Lampard or a Steven Gerrard, their breakout season, a Wayne Rooney, a Cristiano Ronaldo, you have a great season. So you have to be risky, but it can pay off, but it also can not pay off.
Yeah. Are you worried at all with your team with the amount of red flags? Because I look at my team, I'm like, I'm really relying on my backline, or two of my backline, Jota, Saka, and Haaland. Really, I'm relying on those guys to get my points because Isaac ain't delivering, and Havertz, I mean, we'll see. And in the week where Arsenal and City play each other, I want to be having a bit of an issue because I don't think that's not a high scoring game.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned because Gvardiol can still bring in some attacking returns. I went with Gvardiol for the attacking returns, not the clean sheets, because City do leak the goals. Porro is attacking. Alexander Arnold is attacking. Eze and Fernandez could and should have been returning more. And Kuku and Isak are my worries. But again, it needs to be a bit more of a wait,
Mm.
maybe on a couple of them.
Fair.
But yeah, like I said, I think Nkuku, there's too much. He's not returned. He's not played the minutes. He's not started. There's too many yellow flags for me to keep him in the team. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, that's our.
And dropping in price.
Yeah, he's dropping in price. Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, that's our teams. So let's have a look at what that's done to our down under mini league. If I pull up the right one, which is this one. So I'm a terrible host. I can't remember who was where last week, but Mr. Andy Wang sitting in third place with his 91 points, 151. Paul sitting in second, 156, and Lewis on his slot ball sitting in first place with 163 points. Still not too late to jump on that mini league if you wanted to. 1K4WN2 if you wanted to join our league. It's moved around a lot since last week. I think Lewis was probably still at the top last week though, so one to chase down.
Absolutely. Yeah. The person with the target on their back. I have a feeling all those 90 pointers were triple captain, Haaland triple
Yeah,
captainers.
yeah, I think there would be. And if we're speaking of leagues, we should do the right thing, and we should have a look at our wives eye roll head to head. There's a bit of a domination from you this week. Like the sticks is on one each, but you've got the high score, so you take top spot for game week 2.
But hey, it's a long season. Absolutely, very long
And
season.
this is going to feel, and it's so easy when it's 1-1. It's so easy to remember who's where. But yeah, let's see what happens. What happens next week? All right. Well, I think from there, I think it's transfers and bus team time. Now, Is bus team a term you're familiar with, Andy?
I only learned that term today when I was watching some FPL content, so I am familiar with it now. I haven't thought about a bus team, but I have made a bunch of transfers already. I'm an early mover.
Yeah. So a bus team, for anyone who doesn't know, was coined by Josh and Brandon from the Always Cheating podcast over in the States. A bus team is the team you set immediately after the game week ends for the next game week in case you get hit by a bus in the following week and you need your team to do well. So a bus team, the team that you set before you make your transfers, just in case. So, Andy, hit me. What have you done?
All right. On that, I'll just make a note. My team every week is a bus team because my bench is so weak.
Yeah.
So every week it's a bus team. All right, here's my team, peeps. I've already made 2 transfers. It's funny you said you were not going to ship Eze for a downgrade. Guess what I
Yeah.
did? I shipped Eze for a downgrade. So I have a very cheap and weak team. Henderson in the goal because I have no second playing keeper. Saliba at the back. Alexander Arnold, here's the thing. He's been attacking the past, yes. But is he worth a million more than Van Dijk or Robbo? That's my biggest thing because we haven't been seeing those attacking returns so far. So with that $1 million, you can do a lot with that $1 million. So my only question is Liverpool have great fixtures. If we think clean sheets are where they're going to be coming from and every attacking return is just nice to have, but Trent isn't giving those attacking returns, is he worth a mil? That's the thing ruminating in my mind. I haven't touched him this week, but that's just in my mind. And Robinson in the back as well. Look, I'm not going to be playing Howard Bellis or Sangare, realistically. Diogo Jota and Saka remain unchanged. I've got my armband on Saka at the moment. It could move to Haaland. I don't know yet. It could even move to Havertz. Who knows? Now, my transfers made was this. I shipped Brereton Diaz to Smith Rowe because Smith Rowe was going up in price. I'm very price driven. I want to build team value at this early in the season. So I've taken a -4 to make 2 transfers. Brereton Diaz to Smith Rowe. And my second one is Eze to Rogers, mainly for this reason. Eze looks like he could possibly be going down this week. When I made this transfer, he was on minus 97%. He's actually dropped since then. I think when they recalibrated, because this early in the season, they're still trying to get those price changes correct.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have made that transfer if I knew he was a bit lower. But regardless, I think he may drop this week, and Rogers is rising this week, most likely. So to me, a price drop is 0.1 and a price rise is 0.1, and that's a 0.2 move. So for me, assuming Rogers goes up in price, Smith Rowe has already gone up in price, to me that's 0.2 increase in team value. And do I think these guys will go up again? Well, everyone's talking about how good Rogers has played in the first 2. Everyone's talking about, well, Smith Rowe get returns in the first 2. So I think they will go up in price again, meaning it shouldn't be too long before I bank 0.1 on both of these players, right? So that's 0.1 each. That all translates to being able to afford better players later on in the track. So I've actually made a huge downgrade in my midfield. As I could turn around and return this week, I'm very open to that, and I had to be very comfortable with that. But I'm also going to be very happy if he drops, and then I pick him up for 0.1 less because I'm very happy to buy him again if he starts hitting a purple patch. Then up front, we've got Havertz, who I brought in last week. He needs to go up by another 0.1. Then I've banked 0.1 mil. And Haaland with the vice captain armband. And Isaac, look, if it looks like he's going to be dropping this week, I will take another hit to ship him out. I like to protect my team value at all costs, and I'll take -4, -8, -12, -16 to do so. That's just the way I like to play fantasy football, and I've done -12s and -16s in previous seasons and still ended up kind of like still doing okay in the 1 million mark from memory. So it is doable. For me, team value is just so important, and I also just don't like not being able to afford players.
And
So that.
your
Yeah,
-4, your -8s. They like you see them as a this week I've lost 8 points, but if those players give you an extra couple of points a week, you earn those 8 points back. And you, from what we've seen, you're not going to get 4 points from Brereton Diaz in a game. You could from Smith Rowe, you could from Rogers. So that .4 gets earned back like that. Like 4 points, they come back, and then like you say, you're building your team value. So I think yeah, they're decent moves, and they are. Rogers is a playing midfielder in a top 6, top 7 team, so great. Smith Rowe is a goal scoring attacking mid in a decent team with decent fixtures. Yeah, and the Villa
yeah. Both of
fixtures
them have
are
decent fixtures.
great. So
Yeah. My, the things which I want to, my worries are like Barco, Stolacic. Will these two come and bite me in the ass later on? But that's okay. I'm happy to wear those as long as their price won't change. Henderson is the one where I'm like, oh, I can see him going down at some point, and there will be a sideways goalkeeper move, which just won't feel nice. But yeah, look, I do have an avenue up to Palmer, if I need to, because literally I'm sitting with 2 mil in the bank now. I don't know what to do with it, so I'm just going to leave 2 mil in the bank. But yeah, that's my team for now. I'll stop sharing, and let's have a look at yours. Have you made any transfers?
yeah, so after saying I was going to take it easy, yeah, I've gone and I've made two. I'll show you my transfer screen to start with this one here, because I can show you my what I've done. So I've done a bit of I made a move early. Um, that I brought Rogers in, and then realized that he isn't the person I wanted to bring in because I wanted to make two moves. So I moved him back out again. So
What?
I had two
Wait,
free transfers.
what move did you make?
So I had two free transfers. The first free transfer I did was I moved someone in my midfield who I can't remember who I had to Mbumo. But I moved him to Rogers. So hang on, let me figure out who I had to start with, because that would probably be a good plan.
Nkunku. It
That's
was
it. Yeah,
Nkunku.
I moved Nkunku to Rogers at the end of the game week. But then I kind of was getting the gist that Solanke might get unlocked this week, and then he would go down. And with Brighton's fixtures being so good, I wanted to jump on Brighton's fixtures. It's a bit of an evolving plan. I was in two minds. I looked at Rodgers, but I'm also got my eye on Watkins as a replacement for Isak, and I didn't really want to have a double up in the Aston Villa attack. So I decided that I was going to go a different way and have Mbumo. Um, and then I forgot I'd made that decision, and I transferred in Rodgers, and then remembered. So then I transferred him back out. Because if I did Rodgers, something didn't work in my later transfers. The way that I've done it here, so if I'd have went Rodgers, then it would have enabled me to get Fernandez to Saka. But I can do that on the wild card anyway, and I decided to go attack the Brentford fixture at Southampton this week. So getting Bumo in, and then I moved João Pedro in for Solanke, for Brighton's good fixtures coming up after the Arsenal game. So that will.
I like Mbomo. That's a good call. I'm just waiting to know about Tony, whether he's going to be leaving or not before I make that call. And Brentford will have good fixtures in the midterm after the Southampton one. I think there's a few difficult fixtures, so I do like that's a great call. I like Mbomo.
And he's got a couple of tough games coming up after then, but if I wildcard, I think he stays anyway, and I can see his price going up, especially if Tony does leave, and if he doesn't, he's on penalties, he's on some free kicks, so that leaves my team at the moment as Flecken in goal. Again, like you, I'm not super happy about it, But Southampton this week, that decision can wait. Alexander Arnold playing away at Man United, Gvardiol away at West Ham, and Concert away at Leicester. Diego Jota, Eze, Fernandez, Salah, and Mbumo across the middle. Captain is currently on Salah. Again, I'm not sure. And then I've got Isak and Muniz away at Ipswich on the bench. And on the bench, Henderson, João Pedro Porro, and Barco. So that my kind of thinking with this one is that what did I have in the bank? It wasn't as much as I
You
had.
have a strong midfield.
Yeah. So sitting with 1.5 in the bank, which means I can turn Isak into Watkins if I wanted to. I have taken the drop on Fernandez, but I'm not super down. I think he can get that back if he puts a couple of goals in or is involved. I think that goes back up again. And potentially Eze, but then I think there's future rises for Jota, for Salah, Pedro. I think will go up, and Bumo will go up when the fixtures turn. So there's some price rising in there, but yeah, it just gives me a few options to go to. So with 1.5, that would probably be a Fernandez to someone next week if I needed to, or an Isak to a Watkins. I've priced myself out of Saka now until wildcard because I would need to move 2 people, so I would need to do an Eze down to a Rodgers to then afford that. So with 2 moves. But like we still talked about -4s. If I get to that City game and I'm kind of happy with the team and I'm not thinking about wildcarding, I hope to have a couple of free transfers in the bag, and then game week 6 it would be someone. I'm thinking, if Eze starts to score or get points, then I'll downgrade Jota, and if Eze doesn't start doing anything, then he'll take the downgrade.
That you have a very strong midfield. I'm looking at your midfield, and then I look at mine with 1.5 mil, 1.5.5, and a 4.5. And I'm thinking, oh man, like your midfield looks so strong. What are your thoughts on Alexander Arnold? Legitimately, right? He's a good player. We know how attacking he is, but unless he gets those attacking returns, is he worth the extra 1 mil?
While Liverpool are keeping clean sheets, yes. He's got the highest expected goal involvement for defenders across the board. He's on free kicks. He's on corners. He is floating into that middle section. If you watch any of the Liverpool highlights, he is kind of in cutting Salah, staying very wide, and he's kind of coming into the position that Salah used to come into. So he's going to get returns as long as Liverpool keep going. You think about the missed chances from game week 1, the cross to Jota, the Jota missed the header. Like there's more returns in there for him. I think for now he's definitely a keep. He's got the highest, like I said, the highest stats amongst defenders, and until that drops off, I don't see him moving out of my team unless I need significant surgery elsewhere. And if Liverpool are going to keep some clean sheets, two teams kept clean sheets so far this year. Liverpool, Arsenal. So they are the defenses to go with, and I don't have any Arsenal cover. So for me, Alexander Arnold needs to stay. And I think he will stay until he's proven that he shouldn't be there. And for me, with if Gvardiol is in this new position and isn't attacking as much, and they are keeping clean sheets, he's the one I'd downgrade or move
To an Arsenal defender.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. I'll get that Arsenal player in. I'm the only fixture I'm worried about with my current team, because I've got 3 Arsenal, is the Man City fixture, because last year it was not a high scoring game.
But
so
you are going to be in a
but who knows?
position where many other people have those Arsenal assets as well. It's not like you've got differential Arsenal assets. You're not sitting with a Trossard or a Timber. You've got the ones that other people have got, so you're going to get the same kind of score. Those games are the ones that the first game between the two of them, between Liverpool City, Liverpool Arsenal, Arsenal City, whatever. I play my attacking assets and I bench my defenders. And then when I get an idea of how those games go, second half of the year, I then decide. So when Arsenal and City are keep is 1-0 or 0-0, the second game of the season, I play my defenders because I know there's a good chance of getting a clean sheet out of them. First game of the
That's
season,
a
I play
good
my
point.
attackers because I know that they early on in the season, you want to get above your rival. Later in the season, you don't want to lose ground. So I feel the mentality shifts a bit as well. Um, the high scoring games are always the setting the pace games or the we need to catch up games, not the keep plodding along. And if Arsenal and City are level ish game week 20 odd when they play next, I see that being a cagey draw because you can't lose points to someone else, but then you go and thrash Southampton the week after. So that's how I play it. So I think, yeah, I don't think you'll lose out too much by having too many. I just don't know which ones to have. The Arsenal assets, defense, you still have a lot of defenders that can come in and out, and I don't know who's going to play week to week. And I'm still a bit hurt by my Gabriel pick from last year that went awry. So Raya would be the one I went with if I was going to pick any of the defensive assets to go.
I think Saliba is safe, and White.
White is the one I'd get, but at 6'5", I can't have him and
Mm.
Alexander Arnold. Um, so I've got to pick one. If I was going to move Gvardiol, I at this point I think I would move Gvardiol to a cheaper defender and then look at moving Flecken on the wild card to Raya. Um, just because I'm still not sure, and I'd like to keep an option of having two attacking players from those teams. And I think there's a chance in the future that you might want to go with City. You might want to go a Foden, De Bruyne, something if you can't get Haaland. So yeah, there's always. I want to keep as many of those spots open for the other guys.
I'm very keen to see what happens when Foden comes back and how he plays because realistically, I like the balance of a team when it's a non-Haaland team because of how expensive he is, right? And last year, Foden did a good job of keeping up pretty well. So I'm curious to see what happens when Foden's back because if we can get Foden and De Bruyne in the midfield instead and downgrade Haaland, I'd rather take that road. In the meantime,
Mm,
Haaland is on track for a second point one rise, meaning we potentially so he's already 15.1. He will go to 15.2. I don't know how people are affording him, by the way. So people are either wildcarding or they're shipping Salah and downgrading elsewhere to upgrade into Haaland. Because he's not one of those players where you can just be like, I'll make one transfer and I can go sideways to Haaland. He's too expensive. So I don't know
yeah,
how so many people bring him in to pump his price as much, but I'm happy about it.
my only the thing I'm watching for is with so many good players being such a similar price this year, especially, it's going to be easier to have a Salah game week 4, Sun 5, Palmer 6, and that transfer of like the jumping between players might affect their value. If we get if Haaland's a bit more safe because he can score against anyone, I think. But if you get a run of fixtures where City play Spurs, United, Liverpool, Arsenal, you could see people jumping off him onto a Jota or a Jesus if they've got Ipswich, Southampton, Brentford. And then you will see the drop in price if enough people do that move. So it's going to be interesting to see whether that the price game still works. I think it will, and how different it will be with the movement between players.
I think the price game will still work because the way the price rises work. If a player goes down by point 0.1, you lose point 0.1 if you sell them.
Mm.
But, well, it depends on what price you bought them at, but generally. But if a player goes up by point 0.1, you do not gain point 0.1. So if we're getting lots of movement between, let's just say, the premium mid, Saka, Salah, Palmer, Son, right? And people constantly moving between them is forcing the prices to go up and down. They, how I'm thinking about it is they're constantly depleting their team value by constantly making those moves. Because if you don't catch point 0.2 price rises on one person and then it's time to ship to another person,
Mm.
right? You've just lost yourself point. Like, it just say you have caught a point 0.2 price rise. When you sell that player, so if you sell Palmer and you've caught a point 0.2 price rise, you only keep half of that. So if you then go to Saka, and if Palmer hasn't dropped in price, when you go back to Palmer, you can't afford him anymore, even though you had him in your team before. And I think that will lock people out of
Mm.
playing that constant jumping
And
game.
that's the risk that you play, isn't it? Because if enough people do that Palmer to Saka move, Palmer drops down, and then you can move to get back. Um,
Yeah.
but it, I think it's sustained fixtures. If or a turn. If Chelsea lose a few, I say important players, but who are the important players? I don't know. But if they lose a few players and Palmer's not returning because no one's finishing the points, there's no point having him. And if Son is setting up goal after goal for Spurs, there's going to be a movement across, and then you can see Palmer drop, Son go up. Being early in that, again, it's this risk system we talked about. If you're early on that, you get out before it drops. You then get the swing the other way, and then you can move back, and you've actually made money on both. But risky because you do, like you say, you can lock yourself out. You can end up with a team value of 110 million at the end of the season, or you can end up with 95. It's you don't want to go too far one way, because then your game isn't going to work, and you're not going to be able to play the price game. You're not going to be able to play the eye test game because you're just not going to be able to afford the players who are returning.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see, mate. Let's. This is the last game week before the international break, which I'm dreading because, don't you love football on weekends? You wake up to scores and you're like, what did I get? Right?
Well, this week I've been on night shift, so I've been sitting on my night shift watching the games, going, "God damn, he's missed again." So, for me, waking up not to be going, there's no scores this week. It's probably going to be good. But let's end with green arrows for next week would be good. I think green arrows all round. Let's go into the international break with some positive scores. Uh, on the way up, I'm sitting at like 5.5 million at the moment, but we don't look at overall rank until after the Christmas. So let's green arrows, positive scores, and Andy, good to talk to you, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
See you, mate.